I know what you're thinking. It's just a made-up story to scare you while watching a scary movie. But this is a true story. Let me prove it to you. Welcome back to my channel. It's me. And today we're going to talk about the unsolved mystery of the Villisca Axe murders. It was a dark and stormy night in Iowa in 1912. Lightning flashed across the bruised night sky, illuminating the violent rain that lashed against the windows of the Moore family home. Inside, Josiah and Sarah Moore lay nestled between their 4 young children in their south bedroom. Their 2 young guests, Lena and Ina Stillinger, slept peacefully in the east guest room. Outside, the wind screamed and howled like a wounded animal. The shutters rattled in their frames. Heavy footsteps pounded on the roof, shaking the house to its very core. Somewhere in the distance, thunder rumbled ominously. At around 4 o'clock in the morning, a loud crash echoed through the stillness. A large tree had fallen onto the lawn outside the Moore's home. No one stirred. Just before sunrise, a neighbor walked past the house and noticed that everything was unnaturally silent. He thought it strange that no one had yet risen for the day. He also thought it odd that there were no signs of life in the house. Perhaps everyone was still sleeping in. The neighbor went about his business. No one entered the Moore home that morning, and when the police finally did, they uncovered one of the most brutal scenes in American history. The year was June 10, 1912. In a small rural community of Villisca, Iowa, a mere 16 miles from the Missouri border, 6 men and 2 women lay dead in separate rooms throughout the home. Each of them had been systematically bludgeoned to death with the blunt end of an axe, and all of them were innocent. We don't know the identity of the killer or killers. What we do know is that he or they attacked the Moore family and their 2 guests in the middle of the night while they slept. If you've ever wondered why scary movies are never set in the daytime, it's because even the darkest corners of our minds cannot conceive of horrors that might be lurking during daylight hours. Only when we are vulnerable and defenseless in the dead of night can we truly appreciate the darkness that exists in our world. The following is a reconstruction of the events that unfolded that morning inside the Moorish home. At the time of the murders, Josiah and Sarah Moore had 4 children: Mary, 10, Catherine, 8, Arlo, 6, and Herman, 2. Also staying at the house were Sarah's brother, George Kelly, and his friend, Frank Jones. Her sister Lena Stillinger and her daughter Ina were also guests at the home. For many years before the murders, the Moore family had lived a quiet and secluded life in Monona County, Iowa. They were well liked by those who knew them and respected by the rest of the community. Theirs was a simple life. Josiah worked as an engineer for the railroad, and Sarah dedicated her time to raising the children and tending to their home. On June, the family had traveled to the nearby town of Pisgah for a Sunday school picnic. That afternoon, the family returned home and relaxed after a fun-filled day. Later that evening, after the children had gone to bed, Josiah and Sarah joined her brother and his friend for a rousing game of checkers. George Kelly was a traveling minister, and when he wasn't searching for new churches to lead, he sold insurance policies door to door. Frank Jones was a salesman who specialized in selling kitchen gadgets. Both men were staying at the Moore home temporarily while they worked in the area. As midnight approached, the group called it quits and retired for the evening. The children were tucked safely into their beds. George and Frank settled into their rooms. Sarah and Josiah climbed into bed next to each other in their south bedroom with a window facing the street. Mary and the oldest slept in a room of her own. Next door to the couple, Catherine and Arlo shared a room directly connected to the parents' bedroom. Herman slept in a crib in the corner of his parents' room. Lena and Ina shared a guest room directly opposite Mary's room. At around 4 a.m., a large tree crashed onto the ground outside the house. This was the last sound anyone would hear for quite a long time. At first, investigators believed the killer had snuck into the attic of the home and waited until everyone had gone to sleep before pouncing. However, further inspection revealed no signs of forced entry anywhere and no evidence that anyone had broken into the home. The killer may have been hiding in the attic prior to the attack, but if so, he must have done an excellent job of concealing himself. When the police arrived, they found an axe lying in the guest room where Lena and Ina had slept. On closer inspection, they discovered that both mirrors in the house had been covered with towels or clothing. Similarly, every window in the house had been covered with blankets or quilts, suggesting that whoever was responsible had wanted to keep prying eyes away from the interior of the home. The killer had taken great pains to conceal the crime scene from the outside, leading many officers to believe that he was well acquainted with the area. He knew the layout of the house and had carefully planned out his attack in advance. All 8 victims had been bludgeoned to death with the blunt end of an axe. However, the killer had not completely destroyed their body. He had stopped striking them once they were unconscious, showing either restraint or mercy. After killing the family, the killer helped himself to food from the pantry. Then he dimmed the lamp in the living room to make the house appear as though it had been occupied, leading many investigators to conclude that he intended to hide in the home following the murders. Some reports suggest that certain members of the family had their heads covered at the time of their deaths, leading many to speculate that the killer took some sort of pleasure in humiliating his victims. We don't know much about the investigation process in this case, but we do know that over 100 people were questioned. The biggest suspects were Frank Jones and Rev. George Kelly. Jones was immediately questioned by the police and told them that he had been asleep in his room and could not have committed the murders. His alibi checked out and he was released. Kelly, on the other hand, became the prime suspect in the case. Although he had a solid alibi, he was arrested anyway. However, when he was tried for the crime, he was acquitted. Today, the house stands as a paranormal hotspot. Many visitors have reported seeing apparitions, feeling sudden drops in temperature, hearing whispers and seeing objects move on their own. The ghostly manifestations are especially active in the bedrooms where the majority of the victims were slain. Some have even reported hearing the distinct sound of an axe being swung, only to turn around and see nothing. Numerous EVPs have been captured here, including a boy's voice that can be heard saying, "What's that noise?" Another particularly creepy recording seems to capture the essence of the case itself. A whisper that seems to come from everywhere and nowhere says, "No justice." Of course, the internet is full of theories about who killed the Moore family and why. Some say it was a revenge killing carried out by someone who had a grudge against the family. Others believe the killer was suffering from religious mania and took the lives of the family as an offering to God. Yet others think that the killer was a serial killer who chose this family at random. There are a few things to consider. Why was an axe used? What compelled the killer to cover the windows and mirrors? Why did he stop attacking the family once they were unconscious? And finally, why did he leave the house? Was he afraid that the neighbors would wake up? Was he trying to protect the sanctity of the crime scene? Or was he simply tired after a long night's work? What we do know is that similar axe murders happened in other towns near Villisca, but no one was ever charged with any of them. Some believe the Villisca murders were the work of a drifter who wandered into town, killed the family, and then disappeared again into the ether from which he came. Others believe it was a cult member who sacrificed the family as part of a larger ritual. Whatever the truth may be, we may never know for sure. For over 100 years, the identity of the killer has remained a mystery and the case is still open. Today, the house where the massacre took place is known as the Villisca Axe Murder House. It is now a tourist attraction and is said to be one of the most haunted houses in America. Those wishing to spend the night here can book a room in the inn on the grounds. Ghost shows have been filmed here. Documentaries and podcasts have been produced about the house and its tragic past, and thousands of tourists visit every year to pay their respects to the family whose lives were cut short. The legend of the Moore family continues to live on in modern culture, serving as a cautionary tale about the dangers of opening your home to strangers. So what do you think happened at the Villisca Axe Murder House? Who killed the Moore family and why? Let me know in the comments below. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to subscribe. Check out these other videos from my channel. And as always, remember, don't believe everything you think. One house, 8 victims, no justice, and a killer that vanished forever.